Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I have to confess that when I first wrote this talk, it was all about forgiveness. And I wrote it a few days ago, and then I started getting reports about what was going on with your community and all of the incredible, profound losses that you have had in the last period of time, just as recently as a couple of days ago. So I changed my talk up a little bit. And I want to talk not just about forgiveness, but about grief. Because when we have losses, there's a grief, there's a loss, there's a sadness, and that is as it should be. I would never advocate that anybody not do their grief work. Some of you were probably closer to the lady that just recently made her transition than others. But like our announcer said in the beginning today, it's simply a transition, not a death. That does not, however, lessen our grief. It does not lessen our grief. And this community has suffered other losses and other changes, and things are in upheaval right now. And it reminds me of what Ernest Holmes liked to say about the inner and the outer and the micro and the macro. And as above, so below. And what it's reminding me of is our call to help create a world that works for everyone in that global vision that I'm sure some of you have heard about. And in order to do that, we need to move within first, and then move outward. And the upheavals that have been happening in this community recently are also happening in the world. And Doug asked me at the beginning of when we were chatting before the service started this morning, and he said, "What is your short and quick answer to what's going on in the world?" And I said, short and quick is that it is a separation consciousness. And then he said something about healing and the light shining and the consciousness rising, and it reminded me of something else. And that is that what Ernest Holmes said, there is no healing to be done, only a revealing. And so what's going on in the world and what is going on in this community is a revealing. And it's a process that is not always fun. In fact, it's not hardly ever any fun. It's not fun, it's not pretty, it's not pleasant. What's going on in this community isn't always fun. Although I understand we're going to have a fun song at the end, because there's fun in the midst of it all. What's going on in the world isn't always fun either, and not always pretty. There is real tragedy happening in this world. And so this is a part of a process, and it is a revealing process. And it's also a call for us. It's a call for us to go within and ask ourselves, what wants to be revealed in my life right here and right now? That's the call. That's the call for us individually. And if each one of us individually takes the time to go within and listen and discover what that call is and heed it, and then move outward into this community and then into the world, that's when we do our part to help create a world that works for everyone. So Ernest Holmes has this other wonderful quote. He says, "To desert the truth in our hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth." And so when we go within to discover what that inner call is, that's when we discover the truth. This is an hour in need. It's an hour of need for this community. It's an hour of need for the world at large. Our individual job is to go within and discover our truth. And here's what a basic truth is, a few basic truths. God is. It simply is. I don't know about you guys, but I find a lot of comfort in that. I find a lot of comfort in that. And I'll bet you that your beloved who passed away and smiled just before she did so was remembering that. Because God is. It is everywhere present. Sometimes, though, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when we're in this hour of need and we go to that God is place, it can be a little irritating. I remember, this is back in the days when I was still a practitioner and I hadn't even started ministerial school yet. And we were having some strife and some trauma and some upheaval in our spiritual community. And one of the other older, more experienced practitioners came up to me one day and she said, "So Karen, I have a question for you." A couple of questions actually. She said, "Do you believe what we teach, that God is everywhere present? All present all the time?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Do you believe that God is all good all the time?" And I said, "Yes," not knowing that it was a trick question. And she said, "So what about this situation is not good?" And I went, "Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much." And then, in my judgment of these situations, these revealings that we have in our life that are not pleasant, I'm reminded of the Buddhist concept of attachment and non-judgment. Non-attachment, non-judgment. It's only our judgment of the things that make them good or bad. They just are. They just are. Our job is to move within and connect even deeper than we ever have before with the God of our understanding, so that we can get comfort. And we can once again move into that, I call it the place of peace. It's a place of peace. And when we find and embody and be in that place of peace, no matter what, then the revealings can happen out there. The transitions can occur. The revealings can happen. And we can still be in our place of peace. And from that place of peace, we can do our grief work. And here's where the forgiveness piece comes in. Because forgiveness needs to happen. When people make their transition, sometimes in our grief work, what comes up is we feel like they've abandoned us. We need to forgive. Sometimes when the revealing happens out there in the world and people get tragically killed, not only do we need to do our grief work and acknowledge our feelings of sadness and pain, but we also need to forgive. And here's what I know about forgiveness. It's always more about me forgiving myself than it is about forgiving anything out there. For me, forgiveness is part of the grieving process. And it's part of me forgiving myself. And yeah, maybe letting go of those pieces of myself that have caused me some unpleasantness in my life. So when we look at forgiveness, and we have this hour of need, and we're in grief, what do we do? What do we do with all of this stuff? I read a little piece from an author named Anne Lamott the other day. Have any of you heard of her? She's wonderful. I adore her. She said, "How on earth do we respond when we are stunned and scared and overwhelmed to the point of almost disbelieving?" And I suspect that there might be some disbelief going on in some of you right now. There's been a lot of upheaval and loss in this community recently. Really? Has this really gone on? How much more can we handle here? She continues, "I know that we must respond. We must respond with a show of force equal to the violence and the tragedies, but make it a love force, a mercy force, an unnegotiated compassion force, crazy caregiving to the poor and suffering, including ourselves. Patience with a deeply irritating, provocative mother. $2 bills to the extremely annoying guy at the intersection who you think maybe could be working. Or is going to spend your money on beer. Jesus did not ask the blind man what he was going to look at after he restored this man's sight. He just gave hope and sight. He just healed. To whom can you give hope and sight today? What about me? And disappointing old you? Radical self-care. And so we acknowledge the hurt and the pain. And we allow our grieving process to occur. And we do our grief work. And we take care of ourselves radically. And Lamont speaks to it a little bit. I've been working on a self-care workshop. And I got stuck because there's so much to giving self-care. I finally turned it into a 4-week class because one workshop just wasn't going to do it. You all deserve that element of self-care right now with all that's been going on here. The gentleness. And Lamont speaks to eating healthy food and having patience with yourself and a friendly tone of voice and putting lotions on the jiggly things. And forgiving pants. I didn't wear my forgiving pants. And lots of sunscreen and snacks. And maybe the random magazine or a good book. And so we breathe and we move into this place of sweet sorrow. And we acknowledge that we miss the people who have gone, who have made their transition. And at the end of this month, you guys will have an opportunity to tell your stories and have some closure. And we stay in that place and we acknowledge that there's upheaval in this community. And this is the opportunity to sit and vision and decide, what kind of a community do I wish to have? That's the opportunity here. That's the revealing. That's what wants to be revealed. What kind of a community do I wish to have here? Is it all chairs full and then some on Sunday mornings? Or maybe not so much Sunday, but about activities during the rest of the week? Is it about moving out into the world, into this community in this Placerville area? Representing the Center for Spiritual Living and sharing and helping other people and being a part of the community on that level. You guys get to decide that. That's what part of the going in is. And this is also a good time to go within and decide what it is you want for yourself right now. This is the perfect time to decide that. When we have losses in our lives, it's time to sit back and regroup and not judge the losses as bad, but simply know, this is our truth, and we do not desert it. And then we go within and we decide what new wants to be rebirthed. What new wants to come out? What wants to happen here from this point forward? And we look at that. We look at that. And then we move towards that. And we do our forgiveness work as well. I believe that forgiveness is the most powerful spiritual practice we can do. I think forgiveness is more important than prayer. It's more important than all of the invocations and the benedictions and the treatments that we do here. I think it's more important than study, the classes and the workshops. I may be a bit biased. When Doug said in my introduction that I've recreated my life 3 times, he wasn't kidding. I may be a little bit biased, but I really believe forgiveness is the most powerful spiritual practice we can do. And some of us have a real hard time with forgiveness because we think that forgiveness is about condoning other people's actions. We think forgiveness is about making what's going on out there okay. We think that forgiveness is about letting it slide. It is none of those things. Because this whole month has been on forgiveness, at least in my center with the Global Vision, the topic has been forgiveness all month. I've been reading and studying and rereading a lot of my forgiveness work books. And one of the ones that I'm reading is called Forgiveness, the Greatest Healer of Them All. It's by a guy named Gerald Jampolsky. He agrees with me that it's the greatest healer of them all. He says, here's a few of the physical problems that are associated with an unforgiving mind. Headaches, backaches, pains in the neck, stomach aches, ulcer-like symptoms, depression, lack of energy, anxiety, irritability, tenseness, being on edge, insomnia, restlessness, free-floating fear, and unhappiness. And Ernest Holmes says, what untold grief of heart might be relieved by words of cheer and forgiveness. There's a whole chapter in the textbook on the law of attraction. And another author named Eric Hoffer says the remarkable thing is that we really do love our neighbor as we love ourselves. We do unto others as we do to ourselves. We hate others when we hate ourselves. We're tolerant towards others when we tolerate ourselves. We forgive others when we forgive ourselves. The message there is that we forgive ourselves first. We tolerate ourselves first. We love ourselves first. We begin right here and right now with ourselves. We move in. We make forgiveness a way of life and refuse to carry resentments and refuse to allow the actions and the words of others to determine how we feel. So that's our beginning for us. God is. We start there.